Welcome, everyone, to the Roots, the Gut Rules Masterclass, where we are with Russell Mariani, my dad, and we're very excited to be connecting with all of you this evening. This is a educational opportunity for all of us. My dad, Russell Mariani, has been doing this for a long time, many decades. I think we're getting close to 5 decades, Dad, I believe. But we'll say we're almost there for now. And tonight's Gut Rules Masterclass is going to be really focused on mindfulness. We are going to speak on that specifically, and we're going to spend some time walking through what my dad has called the roots of health. And that really makes up the understanding of the purpose of mindfulness and how we can all be more mindful of it. And as my dad will say very clearly, we can all do much better with our gut because that's where all of our healing really begins. And so without further ado, Dad, over to you.
Thank you, Brian. And is my lighting good? Can everybody see me and hear me okay? Brian?
Everything looks great. Go for it.
Okay. Okay. So, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy life to spend a little time with me and us here tonight. I want to thank my wife, Megan, who is the co-founder of the Center for Functional Nutrition, for all the many things she does every day in the background and to help get this event organized and get the message out. And so thank you, Megan. And thank you, Brian, for hosting and moderating tonight's conversation. So what I would like to do is just, as I always do, try to set the stage, create the context out of which the entire conversation happens, and that is to communicate simply but effectively what I consider to be the best approach to proactive health and healing, and that is what I've come to call functional medicine or functional nutrition. And it has a very specific physiological basis out of which everything else comes. And as Brian said, not only does our health begin in our gut, you could also say, as many teachers have said over the years, all disease begins in the gut, but our very life began in our gut. As we were developing in our mother's womb, in our mother's uterus, our source of nutrition between her body and our body came through a very important thing called the umbilical cord, which connected directly into our navel, through our body, into the heart of our small intestines. So that's probably not by accident. And so from the very beginning, our gut has played a very essential role in all aspects of our health. So physical health is the foundation upon which we build the rest of our lives. The quality of our health, more than any other factor, depends on the quality of the life of our cells, cells. The body is composed of at least 100 trillion cells, and many scientists say today the gut alone has over 1,000 times 100 trillion. So if you were to determine the body, just by the number of cells, 90% of what we are is our gut. So it has a massive influence, not only on digestion, but on all aspects of our physiology. So if our gut is healthy, then typically the rest of our body is going to be healthy as well. So it's often the very first place that we want to begin to make changes to give our body the very best chance to restore itself to health. And so the first principle of functional medicine, as I understand it, as I teach it, is this principle of homeostasis, which basically says the body is constantly striving to heal itself, to restore itself to normal functioning. And that's true. And the second principle says that when it comes to every impact on our physiology, especially the impacts of what we drink, what we eat, what we snack on, what we take in as supplements, what we take in as medication, not one of those choices does not impact our physiology. So the second principle says nothing is neutral, everything is either helpful or harmful, but not helpful or harmful in a general way, helpful or harmful in its specific relationship to homeostasis. In other words, everything, every choice that we make is either complementary to what our body is constantly trying to do, which is restore function, maintain function, optimize function. When all the organs and systems and cells of the body are functioning normally, there are no negative symptoms. If all the organs and systems and cells are functioning normally, there is no dis-ease. There are no dysfunctions, there is no degeneration, there is no dis-ease. And so this is a very hopeful approach to health and healing, because it basically says that the body is quite miraculous in its almost infinite capacity or capability to restore itself. The only thing that's required is our cooperation. And so that's where all the problems arise, because very few of us have been taught how to cooperate with these self-healing capabilities. That's the nature of the work. That's the purpose of my work. That's what I do day in and day out. That's everything I've written about in the books that I've written, in the articles that I've written. And as Brian said, my healing journey started over 50 years ago with my own healing crisis. I had an inflammatory bowel disease that I was told was medically incurable, had nothing to do with my diet. I'd need to be on medication every day for the rest of my life and probably require surgery before the age of 25. I was 18 years old when I was given that original diagnosis. Well, none of that made sense to me, even though at the time, as a senior in high school, I didn't know anything about the connections between nutrition and health. I didn't know anything about degenerative disease. I had never heard the words holistic health or integrative health or certainly functional medicine. But I did have common sense. And since I had been on a very strange high protein diet for the last year of my life, the first diet of any kind I had ever been on, and I had gone on this diet to please my high school basketball coach. I realized that pretty soon into that crazy high protein diet, I was experiencing all kinds of minor uncomfortable symptoms. And as the months went by, they became more moderate uncomfortable symptoms until one day they became extremely uncomfortable symptoms. So, in my own experience, I simply decided that I would not go along with what the doctors were saying, who were completely negating any input from me, completely denying that my diet had anything to do with it. And fortunately for me, my diet had everything to do with it. And by making a few simple changes, I started getting better very quickly. And that experience opened my mind. That experience changed my life. And as the next few years unfolded, I found myself learning more, reading more, wanting to understand more about this basic connection between nutrition and health, this basic connection between the functioning of our cells and our overall health and well-being. So I went back to school, and then since 1980, so that makes it a very clear 45-year period that I have been in private practice, teaching people these fundamental principles and the practices that emerge from them. And so, aside from these first two principles, so everything is either complementary or insulting. And we've identified 7 distinct and interconnected root cause areas. And basically, by identifying the insulting habit or 2 or 3 in each of these 7 root cause areas and transforming them into complementary habits, that's the process of self-healing. When you start transforming the insulting habits into complementary habits, your body knows immediately what you're doing, because what you're doing is cooperating with your self-healing capabilities. And guess what? The body responds right away and heals itself. Okay, so I'm just going to mention what those 7 areas are. And then, as Brian said, we're going to focus just a few minutes on mindfulness, and then we will open it up for Q&A. So mindfulness is root cause area number 1, and it refers to whatever you're currently thinking mindfulness refers to, and I'll say a few more words about that in a minute. Root cause area number 2, proper daily hydration. Every cell of your body requires oxygen, requires water, and requires vitamins and minerals and trace minerals and amino acids, all those basic raw materials. You can make the argument that oxygen is the most important raw material. You can make the argument that water is the most important raw material. You can make the argument that micronutrients are the most important raw material. You can even make the argument that redox signaling molecules, which is root cause area number 7, are the most important raw material. I tend to think that they're all equally important, and kind of time has proven that. But many times, in many situations, the easiest place for people to begin a self-healing process is to get better hydrated. And so we promote something called the water cure recipe, which is a method of hydration based on body weight and activity level. And if you do not have a copy of the water cure recipe, put your name or make that request in the chat, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that water cure recipe. Root cause area number 3, micronutrient deficiencies. Again, vitamins, minerals, trace minerals, amino acids, essential fatty acids, healthy fats, and pigments like chlorophyll antioxidants like beta carotene and glutathione. The body has a laundry list, if you will, of all these micronutrients. And if they're not met, then dysfunction can occur. Root cause area number 4 is macronutrient imbalance. And that means, well, what should I eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks? Root cause area number 5 is intestinal dysbiosis, and that simply means of the thousands of trillions of organisms that populate the ecosystem that we call the microbiome, the intestinal microbiome, which starts in the mouth, goes down the throat, into the stomach, 24 feet of small intestine, 5 to 6 feet of large intestine. If you were to take this system out of your body and spread it out, it would cover an entire tennis court. Living in that ecosystem are thousands of trillions of organisms. You're supposed to have 80% of all of those organisms be probiotic. And if that was true, not only would your gut be perfectly healthy, your immune system would be perfectly healthy, your skin would be perfectly healthy, your cholesterol would be perfectly healthy, your brain would be perfectly healthy, everything else in your body would be perfectly healthy as well. That's how important the gut is, the gut microbiome is. And of course, most of my work is helping people, meeting people who have a messed up microbiome. They have an overgrowth of the wrong kind of organisms. And I walk them through a process where we get rid of the bad organisms and replace that with the healthy organisms, the probiotics, and reestablish a healthy microbiome. And when that happens, not only do the digestive system problems go away, but many other problems go away. Root cause area number 6 is oxidative stress. I once heard a functional medical doctor in a seminar say that 90% of all negative adult conditions are chronic and degenerative in nature. Things like arthritis. And 100% of all the chronic degenerative conditions are caused by oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is literally an imbalance of certain very important molecules deep inside the structure of cells. Sometimes they're referred to as free radicals. So some of the most obvious insults that trigger or cause oxidative stress are alcohol, excess alcohol, sugar, refined sugar, junk food, highly processed food, genetically modified food. Those type of things cause inflammation, which is the layperson's term for oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is what causes inflammation. Inflammation of the cell causes dysfunction of that cell. And then it doesn't happen to just one cell, it's happening to billions of cells and sometimes trillions of cells. And when those cells are inside of an internal organ, then that inflammation leads to dysfunction, which leads to degeneration, and over time leads to dis-ease. And root cause area number 7 is redox signaling biology, redox signaling molecules. These are messenger molecules. These are communication molecules. It's a fairly new science. These molecules were discovered only in 1997. The scientists who made the discovery won the Nobel Prize in 1998. And since around 2008, 2009, there has been a supplement developed by a laboratory in the United States. So we have, for the first time in history, a redox signaling supplement. And I have known about this supplement for the last 14 years. Take it myself, Megan takes it, Brian takes it, our whole family takes it, along with other nutritional supplements, superfood, digestive enzymes, probiotics, and of course, a healthy diet, hydration, all these things that we just talked about. So let me now just spend a minute or two on mindfulness, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So to keep things simple and short at this point, because we do want to get to Q&A, the way I describe mindfulness is simply in addition to everything that you already think about, being more aware, being more conscious, being more attentive to the cause and effect relationship of the things that you do every day and how those things, how those decisions impact your health. I simply say that mindfulness, once you have this basic understanding of functional medicine as I've outlined it, nothing is neutral, everything is either complementary or insulting. Mindfulness is knowing the difference between complementary and insulting habits and consciously choosing to practice the complementary habits and either eliminate completely if necessary or modify or moderate the insulting habits so they're not exerting a negative impact. Sometimes with certain insulting habits, the only way to stop their negative influence is to completely eliminate them for a period of time, a month or 3 months or 6 months or longer, and in some cases, forever. Sometimes that's necessary. So mindfulness to me simply means knowing the difference between complementary habits, complementary and insulting habits, consciously choosing to practice the complementary habits and doing that consistently long enough so that the self-healing mechanisms, the self-healing capabilities of the body get activated and become the new reality in our biology. And when those self-healing capabilities get activated and are activated consistently, that's the natural healing process. That's the self-healing process. And as far as I am concerned, as far as I know, as far as I understand, in most situations, we have 100% control over that miracle, over that process, over that proactive cellular healing, cellular regeneration, cellular repair process. Okay, so let me stop there, Brian, and let's move to Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for sending in questions privately. I'm doing my best to get them all in order, and hopefully we can get through them all. I'm gonna go with this question first because it kind of goes with what you were just sharing. And it's actually a question I don't think's been asked before, so I'm genuinely curious as well. When you first started to feel better, when you first got really, really sick, 18, 19, when you first like really got the sense that you were feeling better, what was that like? And do you remember the question was like, what was that like? And then what specifically were you doing at that time that got you better?
Yes. So this was in the winter of 1973. I believe that fateful event, appointment with the doctor where I was told I had this medically incurable condition was either in February or March of 1973. Now, the diet that I had been on for almost a year was this high protein diet, but my parents were not rich, and so we were not buying like, the best quality meat and the best quality this and the best quality that. I was eating very poor quality food, hot dogs and hamburgers and bacon and eggs and toast and these things called minute steaks. They were, not sirloin steaks and not any type of recognizable steak. It was very thin, and I would just fry it up in a frying pan. And I thought I was following along on this, the guidelines for this high protein diet. So over the course of that diet the previous year, if I ate any nutrient rich, fiber rich grains and vegetables and fruit and salad, it was totally by accident. I ate very, very little of those kind of foods and a lot of meat, a lot of dairy, a lot of cheese, a lot of snacks, a lot of things like that. So once I understood that there's probably a connection between that crazy diet that I've been on and how I'm feeling and what's happening in my digestive system and what's showing up as very strange symptoms in the toilet bowl, was to go back to the diet I had been on before, which was the standard American diet: cereal for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, and whatever mom made for dinner. The first change I made was to simply add fiber in the form of bran, which I literally purchased in a container and added that to the cereal I was eating in the morning. And literally within a few weeks of doing that, I started to feel less gas, less bloating, less cramping, and started to see the return of pretty normal looking bowel movements. And that happened within the first 2 weeks. So how did I feel? I felt relieved. I felt vindicated. I felt liberated. I felt there is a connection, hallelujah. I didn't have to wait 6 months. It happened fairly quickly. And of course, that was simply the beginning of a new learning curve for me. I very quickly moved from the standard American diet because I was going to the library now all the time. I was looking at newspapers. I've discovered in those first few months that the word holistic health existed, and there was this whole alternative community of people who were already pioneering remedies and therapies and diets that were much healthier than the standard American diet. So all that happened within a fairly short period of time, within a few months, and I knew I was on the right track, and of course I was. And then I was very lucky in that when I did go out there to explore into the world of holistic health, I met a young woman at the time who had healed herself using something called the macrobiotic diet. This was back in the mid 1970s. I actually met her in a class at university, a meditation class, when I was at Rutgers University. So anyway, she was the one who introduced me to the macrobiotic diet, which I understand today, and even back then, to be a traditional diet. No processed foods, no modern foods, no refined foods, just this very simple whole grains, whole beans, lots of cooked vegetables, fermented vegetables, some quality dairy, some meat and fish. It was a very common sense approach and a traditional approach to nutrition and food and healing. And all I can say is that it worked for me. I studied that for many years, and it was the foundation for my practice, which I started in 1980. And from that foundation, I continued to learn and experiment and would add certain things along the way, and until we are here today, where the last new thing that I have added to my repertoire of things was this redox signaling supplement 14 years ago. So I think it's important that people understand that although there are things being developed constantly, they aren't necessarily groundbreaking things or innovations, like truly significant new things. So what has worked for a very long time continues to work for all the people that I work with. So thanks for asking that question. I hope that was a helpful response.
Yeah, great to hear that that story of your own healing and obviously set you on a path. I'm sure you were thinking very, very different thoughts than you'd ever thought in your life prior to that experience. And as you just shared, it got you on the path to here today. I'm going to combine a few questions because a number of people asked, like basically, what is your favorite mindfulness practice? Do you have a favorite one over the years? Have you any new ones that you like, or is there one in particular that really stands out?
So, of course, the very first thing that jumps out when you ask me what's my favorite mindfulness practice in relationship to functional medicine and functional nutrition, as I've just described it, with this understanding that there are physiological principles and then there are practices that come out of those principles. And it's in practicing complementary habits that we heal ourselves. If what jumped out at me, one of my favorite personal mindfulness practices is chewing. As simple uh, as that seems, it is profound. And I routinely ask people that I'm working with to not only chew better, kind of in a general way, but to make a commitment to a conscious chewing experiment over the next 5 days, or over the next 7 days, or over the next 10 days, where I will ask people to eat one mouthful at a time, put down the fork, put down the spoon, and chew that one mouthful 50 times before swallowing, or 60 times before swallowing. And in the most extreme cases, ask people to chew each mouthful 100 times before swallowing, because that was something that I was taught to do when I was a student in the Kushi Institute, the macrobiotic school that I went to back in the late 1970s. We would have community dinners 2 nights a week. In the study house that I lived in, there were 25 people. I was the youngest person there. I was 25 years old at the time. Most of the other people there were in their 30s and 40s, and they had all come because they had very serious health conditions that they were learning to heal themselves from using this macrobiotic approach, which wasn't just food. It wasn't just learning how to select better quality food and prepare better quality food, but it included many mindfulness practices. And there was no other most important mindfulness practice than chewing properly. And for people who are watching this tonight or are watching the recording of this, if you have any physical discomfort in your belly, even before you change any physical aspect of your diet, if you will simply sit down the next time you eat anything at a table and chew every mouthful at least 50 times and put the fork down, put the spoon down, and just close your eyes and focus completely 100% on chewing. Turn the TV off. Don't be watching TV when you eat. Eating distracted is another major insulting habit. So, but if you just make that one change and you do that with 100% commitment for 5 days in a row or 7 days in a row, most of the time, most of the people who do this and succeed with 100% commitment, not 90%, not 80%, not 75, 100%, and it can be done. I've done it many times myself. You will have a transformational experience. So that's maybe the number one most practical mindfulness practice. And there are many others. Some I I I often say when people ask me this question that they'll ask me if I have a spiritual practice, and I say yes, doing the dishes. And so even though we have a dishwasher machine, I enjoy doing the dishes after a meal. Helps me to reflect on things. I'm by myself. I'm kind of doing what I'm doing, and I find it's a form of meditation, and so I enjoy doing that. But let's leave it there for now. There are many, many other mindfulness practices, of course.
I'm glad you brought up the chewing one because I can attest, and I'm sure my mom and my brother can attest, over the years when we've met some of my dad's clients, almost across the board, they will always, like, the first thing they will say is, does your dad actually make you all chew like 50, 60, 70 times at dinner? And they always say, "Man, we thought that was so crazy, but it really works." They always say
Right.
that. It's always a funny opener. There's a question here, Dad, about colitis, obviously a very serious issue. And specifically, with your experience with people who have had colitis for like long periods of their life, even decades, what have you seen that works for people like that, in your experience?
Yeah, so before I answer that question, I saw in the chat the words intermittent fasting. So thank you, whoever posted that. That's another great complementary habit. That's a great mindfulness habit, intermittent fasting. And there are many ways of doing intermittent fasting. You could just cut out one meal and do that for 7 days in a row. Again, there are many ways of doing intermittent fasting, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So on our website, we have a lot of written testimonials, excuse me, covering every imaginable digestive disorder under the sun, including colitis and ulcerative colitis. And I believe one of the video testimonials is from a woman named Shannon. And Shannon's testimony was that she suffered colitis for over 20 years. She was housebound most of that time. She had these beautiful dogs that she couldn't even walk the dogs down the neighborhood because she had such urgency with her bowel movements that she was afraid to leave the house. And Shannon became a client, and I introduced her to these changes in the 7 areas. And Shannon's testimony is basically 5 days. I'm pretty sure it was either 5 days or 6 days or 7 days, but some crazy short amount of time into her program. After 20 years of loose, urgent, frequent bowel movements, she had a totally normal bowel movement, and she got better very quickly. So, and there may not be another video testimonial to that particular condition, but there are lots of written testimonials in the area of colitis and ulcerative colitis. What I want everyone to know about these inflammatory conditions Crohn's, colitis, celiac, ulcerative colitis. These are conditions caused by toxins produced by the bad organisms that have taken over the gut microbiome. This condition we call intestinal dysbiosis, because those organisms aren't just hanging out in your gut, in your intestines. They eat your food, they digest your food, and eliminate waste products. The waste products of the bad organisms, the dysbiotic organisms, are toxic to your system. And it is the toxins produced by these bad organisms which cause the gas, the bloating, the cramping, the pain, the constipation, or the loose, urgent, frequent bowel movements. And they're called inflammatory bowel conditions. So the toxins also cause the intestines to expand. And that expansion causes another problem called intestinal permeability, which is called leaky gut. And so the toxins that are supposed to stay contained in your intestines and only turn out into the toilet bowl, because of this gut inflammation, because of this leaky gut, some of those toxins leak out into your bloodstream, become systemic, circulate around your body, and cause problems outside of your intestines. Joint pain, muscle cramping, skin disorders, mood disorders, cognitive disorders. So in functional medicine, we say everything is downstream of the microbiome. So so I have a protocol in my program to address and resolve the toxicity caused by the bad organisms. It isn't something that happens overnight. It's very unusual. Shannon's experience was very unusual. You know, she probably deserved it, but usually it takes several weeks to get enough of those bad organisms physically neutralized and physically removed before you have that kind of result happening. So my program is designed to address and resolve the symptoms from any and all inflammatory bowel condition, including colitis. I hope that was a helpful response.
Very much, thank you. We've got another specific question for IBS and the FODMAP diet,
Yeah, yeah,
FODMAP. Do you have an opinion, any kind of words that you could share about that?
yes. So, sorry, what was before FODMAP diet?
Specifically IBS and
Oh yeah, sorry,
following the
IBS,
FODMAP.
IBS and FODMAP. Yeah.
Yeah.
So IBS is the term that doctors will give a condition that is any dysfunction at all occurring anywhere in the digestive system that doesn't rise to the level of a inflammatory bowel disease. So IBS you can think of as lowercase inflammatory bowel disease. It's annoying, it's frustrating, it's uncomfortable, but the doctor isn't quite ready to give it one of these big names and put you on a medicine. But medicine doesn't help in most situations. Today they usually group IBS in two groups. IBS C for people who whose system is dominated by constipation, or IBSD, or people whose system is defined by loose, urgent, frequent bowel movements. All of these conditions, all forms of IBS, are driven by the same insults in the 7 root cause areas, which all contribute to a condition of dysbiosis, which is an overgrowth of the wrong kind of organisms in the gut. That's what IBS is. It's just a mild form of these more serious conditions. So following the same protocol, you can get relief. In terms of the FODMAP diet, I simply say that if following the FODMAP diet, which basically eliminates certain vegetables, certain types of vegetables, certain foods, if that works for you, fantastic. But I have had many people come to me who have been on the FODMAP diet, and it didn't help at all, or it helped a little bit, but it didn't solve the problem. And that's because when you have intestinal dysbiosis, when that is the dominant condition, and anytime you have a digestive system upset that doesn't resolve quickly and easily, then you definitely have intestinal dysbiosis. When that is the situation, even if you chew properly, even if you are properly hydrated, even if you eat a really healthy diet, even if you take probiotics, even if you do all the things that I suggest, but you do not address and resolve the dysbiosis, you will see either very limited results, very limited improvement, or none at all. And that's very frustrating for many, many people. But if you go through the herbal protocol described in my book, described in the video course, or choose to work with me directly one-on-one, then we will resolve that dysbiosis and those problems will go away.
Awesome. And I had a couple questions. We often get this question, but I think it's worth um, saying or answering again because you're always learning more, and especially with your clients, you're constantly learning. Um, one of the big diets in today's world is the carnivore diet, people kind of just eating meat, people being extreme in their choices. Um, and a lot of people saying or claiming that they're having all these benefits. What's your kind of, what have you seen over the years with those types of diets, specifically like the carnivore diet?
Yeah, so one of the principles that I learned in macrobiotics is everything turns into its opposite. And so for many people, they're on a unhealthy diet, they're on a highly processed food diet. Who knows what they're eating, but whatever diet they have been on has created a problem in their body or multiple problems in their body. And then they see a video or listen to a podcast about somebody promoting one of these diets: carnivore diet, paleo diet, vegan diet, raw food diet. There's so many. And it works for them. And it works for a couple of months, or in some cases, it works for a couple of years. But by definition, these types of diets are not sustainable over the long term, and they will turn into their opposite too. Coincidentally, and this is the God's honest truth, as they say, I received a text yesterday from a very dear friend of mine who had been on the carnivore diet for the last 2 years. She had IBS and she wanted to try this, and I cautioned her that even if it worked, it would only work temporarily, and eventually she would have to, be on a more moderate diet, hopefully a more traditional food type of diet. Well, sure enough, it worked for her beautifully for 18 months, and then she started to have her same old symptoms. And she was letting me know that she had found a local practitioner who was advocating, a lot of the things that I advocate. And sure enough, she is now feeling much better on this broader diet, more traditional diet. So what I say about all these diets is um, a diet, by definition, is a short-term fix, not a long-term solution. And so, so like I said, many of these diets can work for people short term, but they generally do not work over the long term. But the approach, see, I don't think of what I do is promoting a particular diet. I know the macrobiotic diet became very popular, but that's not really what macrobiotics is about. Macrobiotics is understanding principles and understanding practices and finding through experimentation what works best for you. The macrobiotic diet, if there is such a thing, includes all healthy foods, especially traditional foods. So I have used that approach successfully in my own life and successfully in my work for 45 years. And it is sustainable, and it is safe, and it is effective, and it is easy to do for most people.
Okay, great. And I'll just say I apologize if we didn't cover your question this evening. I did just put a message in the chat. And maybe you were feeling that you wanted to, speak with Russell directly, or for whatever reason, there is a link there. You can book time directly with Russell. That's completely complimentary. We want to create a opportunity for people to take their life into their own hands, to heal in ways that are sustainable. And for many, many people over my dad's 45-year career, one conversation with him can set in motion very substantial results, even a lifetime of health and happiness. So do take advantage of that. And for our last question, Dad, there's so much talk always about what's the most important meal of the day, what are the most important foods, and I'll just ask this as specific as possible. Breakfast is always kind of considered this really important meal for a lot of people. Do you have any guidance in terms of how best to start the day in general?
Yes, I would say the best way to start the day is when you wake up, say, thank you, God, thank you, universe, thank you, body, thank you. I get another day to play. In terms of, it is interesting. I don't think there is across the board for everybody a most important meal. I think they're all equally important. And I think because of the reality of intermittent fasting, the importance of intermittent fasting, and by the way, that's why we get the word breakfast, because it's breaking the fast. It's literally the earliest form of intermittent fasting was eating breakfast, eating lunch, and eating an early dinner or skipping dinner. And so you would go 10, 12, 13, 14 hours without eating, and you would break that fast by eating breakfast. So my basic recommendation across the board for everyone is explore recipes in these areas. Find a good recipe or two or three or four for cooked whole grains, for cooked beans. Hummus is very popular. Hummus is made from chickpeas, which is a bean. Um, Root vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, green leafy vegetables, vine vegetables like squash. This is the time of year when this is harvest time. So many of our vegetables are fresh, are available now that are less available at different times of the year. Um, Fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi, small amounts of quality yogurt, small amounts of quality dairy food, goat milk, cow's milk, again, small amounts, organic quality. You definitely do not want to eat the meat from animals who've been treated with antibiotics or eating food that's not healthy. You certainly don't want to drink the milk of any animal that's been treated with, these type of things either. So clean food is always the best choice, and then experiment with all these different food groups. And for people who I end up working with in what I call the phase one part of their restoration process, a simple diet combining cooked whole grains, cooked vegetables, and small amounts of cooked chicken or fish for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for many people, even people with very serious conditions, tends to be the simplest dietary approach, along with mindfulness, along with chewing your food, along with proper hydration. Those few things can often get somebody out of distress, get their digestive system out of acute discomfort into a place of much better functioning, where we can then begin to add on, the other habits and the other aspects, the other changes in the other root cause areas.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Russell. As always, I've had the great opportunity to hear many of these things at the dinner table, the breakfast table, my whole life. And now, 37 years down that road, I still find that I learn things. And that's pretty cool. So I hope that this was valuable in some way. I hope that it was mostly educational in a lot of ways. The really the really amazing thing for my mom and my dad and myself is that we have an opportunity to do this, to host an event like this where we get to come together and have conversations like this about how to feel better, how to be healthier. That's a really awesome thing in all of our lives. I'm sure we can see that that's a really, really great thing. And we can only do it because you showed up and said yes to come tonight. And for those that watch this in the recording, thank you for being a part of this as well. And we are excited for all of you. I think a really big piece about what we learned tonight is that first thing that Russell mentioned, that if you got nothing else from tonight, all of our bodies, most basic principle is that our bodies want to be healthy. They want to heal. And it's about listening. It's about finding great teachers, finding great community. And thank you for doing that with us tonight. So that's all. I'm going to hit the off button and have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Brian. Great